Hi, everybody. Today is the 14th of March, 2022, and I'm making a specific video about Ontario Bill 67 that requires the attention of all Ontarians. And I want to share with you a little bit about this bill. You can find it online. It's called the Racial Equity in the Education System Act of 2021. It has received some significant criticism from some thought leaders, including Barbara Kay, journalist Jordan Peterson, in a video online that was put up late last week. Um, there's something in this bill, and you can look it up easily at the Ontario website, that is predicated on an idea that seems to be very popular called social construction theory. And social construction theory is that we use language to make up reality. And this is kind of reverse from what we have presupposed since the beginning of the Western Enlightenment 400 years ago, that we use words to describe what reality is. So instead of using words to make up reality, we encounter and engage with objects and relationships in the world, and we use words to describe them. So when psychologists created developmental theory, what they were doing was they were observing processes of children growing up and writing down using words what happens. But a social constructionist believes that we use words to create reality, including race and including gender. So boys, girls, males, females, men, women are socially constructed words that are oppressive. Because fundamentally, this ideology that uses social construction theory to argue for its advances into our legislative system is all about protecting people from being oppressed. So the words boys and girls are oppressive categories, oppressive language categories in power discourses. There's a fancy terms for this. That box people into those categories, because the label of boy and label of girl are oppressive. People need to be liberated from this. Similarly to the idea of these racial categories, I've been following the notion of critical race theory and critical theory, which is the larger theoretic framework that critical race theory comes from, and that this idea of social construction comes from, for quite some time. And last year I was reviewing professional development videos by American teachers, and more than once from teachers in professional development workshops or giving trainings, describe racism as being created deliberately by white people to oppress black people. Of course, that's American, but this is this notion of social construction. Okay, we make these things up, and this is completely an upside down categorization. So fundamental to this law is this notion of that race is socially constructed, and that we must put into law protections for people because of this historic oppression of black people, to make sure that either our conscious racist bias or our unconscious racist bias are addressed in the education system, and that we need to re-educate people from historic oppression of these language categories that we've created racism. Um, you know, because this is about victim categories, this critical theory, the social construction of race has a victim. Of course, these are visible minorities, particularly African Americans and blacks, depending on where you are and what particular label you might use. But the oppressor is white people. Okay, it's white people made up racism, and white people have used language to oppress black people for far too long, and so this social constructionism needs to be addressed. And this pits people into racial categories, immutable characteristics, right? Our skin color, our eye color, our hair color, our pigmentation. And it makes generalizations and assigns historic responsibility for these things. And in the anti-racist world, it's no longer appropriate to just be not racist. You have to be anti-racist. So you have to seek out racism where you might find it, and you have to address it. And racism is systemic. It means it's in all systems. So this language is creeping into a bill, an act to amend various acts with respect to racial equity. And it's very, very challenging. This is a call to action, of course, because you need to reach out to your member of parliament and to say that this anti-racist bill is actually racist, and that this is going to cause a problem in the upcoming election. For further analysis of this, more detailed, and I just particularly touched on the idea of social construction of race and gender here, which is underlying this really, really toxic ideology. You can watch the Jordan Peterson video that's available online on Bill C-67. But look, I'll tell you this: racism isn't socially constructed. Racism or othering of another group of humans is an unfortunate and very toxic human tendency. When I was a young child in the approaching the mid-1970s, I lived in Sept-Îles, Quebec, 7 Islands, and as an Anglophone, I was a child, only 3 or 4 years old, of a mining engineer who worked for the Iron Ore Company of Canada, my dad. And I was hospitalized 4 times by the neighbor's child, who were, let's say, patriotic francophones and didn't like Anglophones. Now, one could say maybe this is socially constructed, or one could just say that this is a fact of othering that people do. The Hutu and the Tutsis in their wars against each other in Africa, there have been several African genocides where one group, identity group of Africans, has committed genocides against other groups of Africans. Just in the last couple of decades, we had, of course, the Serbs and the Croats in the former Yugoslavia. We have games of identity being played between Russians and Ukrainians today, and genetically, of course, they're the same. But here in Ottawa, we had historic battles of others between the elite and moneyed Protestant people of English descent, we'll call them the Crown Loyalists, and the Irish working class people. All over Canada, we've had these disparities. Whenever we get differences between humans in groups, we can get prejudice that gets entrenched. And the idea of growing beyond racism means that we value people on their individual merit and their character and their behavior, not on their group identity. So the stereotype of putting negative attributes onto an individual because of the color of their skin and therefore because of the group that they are born into is inherently anathema to the society that we've managed to build, where we have torn down those boundaries and torn down those structures of hatred over the last several decades, really since the civil rights movement started to really take hold and move us forward in our generation. And I'm very proud of the work that we have done to be more recognizing of other people in our society and other cultures, and that we've taken away some of the boundary or some of the issues that create this othering in society. But what this bill does is it's going to institutionalize racism. The very thing that it says it's trying to fight, it's going to institutionalize in the law in Ontario. And the concern is, because we see these laws like this get instituted in one province and then get instituted in other provinces, and then they get instituted at the federal level. The problem here is that it's the beginning of a slippery slope, and we must speak out against this. It's no longer okay for us to sit idly by and just pretend that the government is going to take care of us and that they're ultimately doing good for us. There are bad actors within the political system at all levels of government who are trying to institute these kinds of policies, and it's extremely destructive to the society that we live in. So if you value the society that we live in, where we can recognize people by their humanity, by their individual characteristics, by their merit, by their character, the content of their character, and treat people as individuals instead of as group stereotypes, then you must contact your member of parliament. If you're in Ottawa, I'm in Ottawa Centre, and that is Joel Harden's riding. And I've left numerous voicemails for Joel over the last few days about specific topics. And you can also sign a petition that I'm going to link in the comments. This petition is going to the only member of provincial parliament who has voted against this bill so far, and we're gathering names of concerned Ontarians to push back against the passing of this legislation.